Gemara wants to explain. By the way, Jaime, you know, we have to thank you because of you, we got Michael Silverman into this our Gemara class. So maybe for the new Gemara, we're gonna encourage you to bring someone else also in.
Bezrat Hashem. Michael has his own energy. He'll be with us regardless. He finds it.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'm giving you homework, Jaime, for another person. You know that.
I got it. I got the message.
You got the message. All
Bring
right.
more fish.
Exactly. Okay. You know, when you talk about fish, you know, Jaime, it says that the father has a responsibility to teach his son. The one opinion, morning Adam is he has to teach him how to swim. And the basic reason is in the old days, you know, the major form of transportation was by boat. And therefore, if you need to know how to swim, because chas v'shalom, if something goes wrong with the boat, whatever raft or whatever you're on, so you have to know how to swim. You know, but some say, you know, in a more homiletic way, it's not just to swim, to swim in the waters of this world, to help them swim to make it. You know, we want to they should make it as a Jew. That's how we have to, you know, we talk about fish, we talk about water, talk about swimming. We have to help the people swim in the deep
I think the first explanation really could stand on its own, because if you think about it, if a father doesn't teach his children how to swim, the earth is 2/3 water. The likelihood of someone falling in the water at some point in their life, it's really pikuach nefesh. You have to know how to swim. That's like I would go with the peshat. You don't even need the homiletic.
Right. Of course, the pshat is the main. You're right. It's the main, but this is general. The homiletic is just to, in a different fashion.
Additional.
Another message. Correct. Morning, Mark.
And Rabbi, the other two are to learn how to make a living and learn Torah, right?
Right. And if it's a firstborn, and also if it's a son, it's Brit Milah, Pidyon Haben. Those are all other ones that are also mentioned there. Correct. The Gemara says the following. We're on Beis Zaman Aleph. Minahanimile. How do we know this law that a sukkah cannot be higher than 20 amot? Right? The Mishnah stated that the first opinion of the Mishnah is a sukkah higher than 20 amot, which we said 20 amot is between 30 and 40 feet. But a sukkah is so high, it's not kosher. How do we know that? Amar Rabbah said, the Amar Kra, because it's based on the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Basuku teishu shivat yamim." The pasuk says you should dwell in a sukkah for 7 days. L'man yedu doratechem, in order that the generation should know, ki basukot hoshafti es bnei Yisrael, that they should know that I placed you in Sukkot when you came out from Egypt. You went to the desert, and the way we translated it, the Sukkot are the Ananei Kavod, that the clouds of glory you were placed in, you were protected. So, and now the pasuk says that you need to know. Good morning, Mr. Haber. So the fact that the pasuk says you need to know, so the Gemara is saying, is darshaning that you need to know and realize that you are in a sukkah. You need to know and see. You need to know that the schach, that the covering over you is a temporary covering. It's a schach, which is reminiscent of this cover, the special cover that Hashem. You have a special cover over you, which is a temporary cover, similar to this special cover that was over the Jewish people in Egypt. So ad esrim amah, until 20 amot, adam yodea shehu dor b'sukkah. Until 20 amot, a person is cognizant, realizes that he's sitting in a sukkah, because that's the normal height that you eyes see. But the mailam esrim amah, but higher than 20 amot, Ein adam yodea shehu dor b'sukkah. You don't focus, you don't know on a regular basis that you are in a sukkah, that the ceiling that's above you is a sukkah ceiling. Why? Mishum shelo sholta be'ena. The eyes don't focus higher than 20 amot on a regular vision. That's a similar thing by a menorah, that if the menorah is higher than 20 amot, is also pasul. Also, it's invalid. And that's what we said yesterday about the string that the korah by the mavui, by the alleyway, to recognize that this is private property, this is public property. Also, when you're putting up that thing that people should be able to see, so up higher than 20 amot is not easily seen by a person, and therefore it is invalid. That's the first reason given for why a sukkah higher than 20 amot. You need to, so this is a very interesting answer, that the idea is that when you're in a sukkah, is the constant notice that you're in a sukkah. Just like, there's a halacha when you're wearing tefillin. Mr. Haber is here in our class, so I always notice Mr. Haber is touching his tefillin on a regular basis. I don't know if you ever noticed that. And why is he doing that? He's always cognizant that he has a tefillin on. That's one of the reasons why we touch our tefillin in certain places, is because you can't forget you're wearing tefillin. You have to, I hope you don't mind me mentioning that, Mr. David. That's why it's a mitzvah and mashmesh tefillin. It's a mitzvah to touch your tefillin on every so often to remind you have your tefillin on. Not, the person could get, because if you lose focus, you have your tefillin, and you might not treat the tefillin the way you're supposed to be treating the tefillin, with the proper halachot and respect that's called for when you're wearing your tefillin. So therefore, we do something to remind ourselves. That's why you need to touch your tefillin. So the same way you need to be cognizant you're wearing your tefillin for that purpose, so too you need to remember that you're in the sukkah. To remember this is to remind you of the protection. The schach represents the protection of Hashem, that He protected us in the desert. Okay. So therefore, you need to be able to see the schach, and therefore, if the schach is too high, there's no problem if you make a sukkah on a roof, on a rooftop. So the ground your 20 amot begins from where you're standing, not from where the beginning of the building is. From the first floor, it's from wherever your floor is, and then you go from you're standing, you're 20 amot above. Now, Rav Zera Rav Zera says he has a pasuk based on a pasuk in Yeshaya that translates what's called a sukkah. It says, "Sukkah tiyeh l'sel yomah mechorev." The sukkah is going to be for a shade from the heat of the day. So the word sukkah is used when it's referring to something that's done as a shade. So when the purpose of the sukkah is that the schach brings shade to you. So now, ad eser amah, until 20 amot, adam yoshev v'sel sukkah. Until 20 amot, you're in the shade of a sukkah. That's the shade of a sukkah. When you put up schach, you put up the schach, and you have your walls. So what is providing you that shade in the sukkah? That covering that you have on the sukkah. But if the walls are higher than 20 amot, so then what's happening is the shade is coming from the walls. It's not coming from the schach, and that's the problem. So, but the Maila Mesimama ain't Adam Yoshev B'Sel Sukkah, Elis B'Sel Adfanot. It's going to, you're sitting in the shade of the walls, because when the ceiling of the sukkah is higher than 20 amot, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's what's going to give you the protection. What's the walls? All those walls are providing you that shade, and we need to make sure that the shade is being provided by the schach, not by the walls.
So you need both of them. You need the wall and you need the schach.
Right, but the point of the walls is not for the shade. The point, the schach you need to get the shade from the schach.
From the schach.
So this the point of a sukkah. The Torah says, "I want you to make a sukkah." The word sukkah, based on this pasuk, refers to the schach. That you need to, and it refers to the schach being a shade. Your sukkah, your schach has to serve as shade. And if your schach is not bringing the shade, if the walls of the sukkah are bringing the shade, and not the schach, so that's not a kosher sukkah. Okay. Now the Gemara. So Abaye challenges Moni Ariel. Amalei Abaye. So we're on Beis Amen Aleph and B2. It's 2A. It's B. It's 2. 2A2. So the Gemara says, Amalei Abaye. Ela ma'ata koto ba'ashrot kanayim. If you make a sukkah in a valley between two mountains, and because of that, the sun doesn't there's no sun that's shining there because the mountains are blocking the sun. Hachinami the lohavi sukkah. Are you going to tell me that it's not a sukkah because the shade that's provided in the sukkah is provided from the mountains, because the mountains block the sun from coming in. It's not your schach. You made this sukkah between the mountains, and you just told me in order for it to be kosher, it has to be the schach it's the source of the shade. What do you say? I mean, could you see the stars, or could you use it? But here the question is, what is causing the shade of the sukkah? I have a
less
sukkah.
than 20 amot, Rabbi Yossi.
It's less than 20 amot, but what's causing the shade of the sukkah here is the mountain. The mountain it's blocking the sun. Okay,
Maybe higher than 20
but as
amot.
long as that's true. But usually, when the sun will come out, at least the schach will provide the shelter from the sun when it's not cloudy. Okay, but here we're talking about when they made the sukkah in the valley. So those mountains, that will prevent the sun. You're saying it's still not going to stop it? When the sun is moved, if it's directly on top of the sukkah, you're saying. Early in the morning, in the afternoon. But in the middle of the day, everything gets up. That's the concern. But I presume that even when the sun is out, but the fact that the side walls, the fact that there's these mountains that are so high up, it's going to provide more of the shade of the sukkah than the schach itself. Most probably more. If let's say you have the sun is directly on top of this sukkah, right? But this sukkah but you have these mountains that are also that are on the side. It's still that the mountains are definitely going to bring in block a certain amount, right? You don't see it. You don't see it. We have to know exactly what it looks like when you have mountains all the way up and you have a sukkah all the way down. So it's still a lot of the shade. Right. So I'm saying that's Mr. Ashley wants to know what saying, if the sun will be directly on top exactly of the sukkah, would we say that it's the schach that's protecting, or is it still that the walls, or is it?
Rabbi, even if if it's higher than 20 amot, it won't even work. So there's no question.
Right, yeah, but here, very good, Ariel, Yaron. But the sukkah itself here is in the valley, and then you made the sukkah less than 20 amot. The sukkah was made the proper height, less than 20 amot. But what is the thing that's blocking what's creating the shade of the sukkah is the mountains. So now, and therefore, the Gemara's question is maybe it shouldn't be a kosher sukkah. So Mark is saying, what do you mean, Rabbi? If the sun is directly over the sukkah, then the mountains are not providing the shade. I'm not sure if that's true. You know, we have to that's
Rabbi,
the
at certain times of the day that the mountains will block the sun, certain times of the day the sun will be directly over.
right. But the question is, even when it's directly over, how much shade is still being provided from the walls of the sukkah? That's the question.
The walls or the skaf?
The walls, because the Gemara seems to be saying that the problem here should be that instead of the schach providing the shade, when the mountains are going to be providing the shade, and that's what the Gemara's question
mountains
is.
would compete with the mountains would compete with the walls depending on the time of day.
Right. The question is, the mountains are going to are question is, it's competition with the schach of the sukkah. Is the question? Is the mountains be the one that's creating the shade of the sukkah? And the Gemara is saying that the mountains are creating the shade of the sukkah, and therefore it shouldn't be a kosher
But from
sukkah.
where? From where, Rabbi?
They
From the
they
side,
would
from the
compete at
wall?
sunrise and sunset in the early and the late hours.
Okay, but that's Mark's question is, what do you mean during if the sun will be directly on top? It should be that the mountains will not be providing the shade. That's Mark's question, and it's not clear to me if that's true. It could be that even when the sun is on top, all the way on top, it's still a lot of shade it's still being provided by the mountains. But let's see. We have to look into this question of Mark. So let's see what the Gemara is. That's a biased question. The Gemara. Amalei Abaye elameata. If you make a sukkah in this valley, are you going to tell me it's not a kosher sukkah because the shade is not coming so much from the schach, it's primarily coming from the mountains? That's the Gemara. And if it's true, the Mishnah would need to tell us that. And the Mishnah never told us that if you make a sukkah between a mountain that it would be, and it's less than 20 amot, it would be invalid. The Mishnah says if you make a sukkah, it's less than 20 amot, you're good. So
Rabbi, there's a
yes.
schach, there's a schach over here.
Yes, he made a beautiful
sukkah.
Beautiful kosher sukkah. But the Gemara's question is the same way you told me that if you make a sukkah higher than 20 amot, the issue is that the walls are providing the shade instead of the schach providing the shade. Because since the walls are so tall, they're the dominant figure in creating the shade in the sukkah more than the schach, right? So Mark, you can ask your question over there also. When the Gemara says if you have walls that are very high, the Gemara says we say that it's a problem. If it's higher than 20 amot, according to this opinion, the problem with higher than 20 amot, it's the walls that are creating the shade. It's not the schach.
But Rabbi, you have the same problem if you put a sukkah between two homes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's like two mountains. Exactly. So who's providing the shade? Is it the schach or is it the two homes on the sides? But Mark's question is, Rabbi, what do you mean? You might have the two homes on the side, but what about if the sun is directly on top of the sukkah? So maybe the two homes are not providing. They're still providing a lot. They're still doing a lot. Even when the sun is directly on top of the sukkah, which is between the two homes, it's still, those two homes are still doing a big job here in providing a lot of shade. That's what I would think. That's the answer of your question and the question, and especially the mountain question. Okay. Right? Bound out in the townhouse.
there's no mountains that are really tall, but the house is really close to the pond.
And they really block.
So they think it's really
So the Gemara answers like this. Listen to the Gemara's beautiful
Uh,
answer.
Rabbi, the moment
Yes.
can we make a separation from the schach, right? Because we see we have to have open roof. Well, we have to have the schach and nothing above the schach, right?
We have not right. We have nothing above the schach, right? Because
So meaning the
that will
sun,
be,
the
you
sun,
can't have
the
any
schach.
trees above the schach. That right. That will be. We're going to get into that later on in the Gemara. Yes. This right. You're right, Yaron. There's nothing on top of the schach, but there's everything on the side. There's houses on the side. There's mountains on the side, and that's the Gemara's issue. Why, if you need to have the shade from the schach, if you have the mountains on the side, you have all these houses on the side. That's these big buildings on the side. That's going to be providing the shade and not the schach. The Gemara is going to answer. Was it talking about never what? Never the shade. I mean, you're saying there's no, or at least at the end of the day, whether the sun is yes or no, the end of the day is the schach is not providing most of the shade. That's the Gemara's. If you'll make a measurement, who's providing more of the shade? The shade.
There's no sun coming through the sky. There's no sun coming through the sky at all. I see sun coming through the sky 5 to 3 minutes. And I see how much shade and how much sun do I have? Ocean. Or if the house for the majority of the day is blocking the sky, then we're talking about the road, the majority of the day. The majority of the day, it's the house, not the sky. So what are we talking about? The majority of the day? Or at any moment?
Any moment. If you now when you walk into that sukkah, any moment of the day, 24 hours a day, when you walk into the sukkah, and now there is shade here. You have shade. Now the question is, who was the producer of the shade? Was the producer of the shade the schach, or was the producer of the shade?
It'll depend on the time of day.
I'm saying at no point is the schach providing 51% of the shade. At least 50, because the houses are the mountains, exactly. Houses and the mountains are definitely providing more than 51% at all times. Is that clear, Jaime? They're good? You want
Yes.
to say something? So the
No,
Gemara
it'll depend on the time of day, Rabbi. The sun moves, and depending on the angle, it'll either be blocked by the skach or the at high noon it's going to be blocked by the skach, and different times of day when the sun is at different angles, it'll be the walls, and then it could be the mountains in the valley.
My question to you, Jaime, we have to talk to someone who's a little engineer. Even when if the sun would be on top, would we still, how much shade is still being provided by those big side walls, even when the sun is on top? That's
Rabbi, you don't need to be an engineer. When it's directly overhead, the angle is straight down. The mountains can't provide any shade.
I'm not sure. We have to check up if that's
Okay.
true.
I yield to the Gemara.
No, I don't know. We have to see. We have to find out more about how these things run. I have to go to the valleys a little bit and find out a little bit to make a little trip to the Grand Canyon, right? Okay. So the Gemara says an amazing, beautiful answer. Look what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, as long as the schach is there, has the ability to provide the shade. If you would remove the mountains on the side, you remove the houses from the side, what will be providing the shade? The schach. That's a kosher story. The fact that you have the mountains there, but you created a picture that has the ability to provide to benefit from.
That's what we do today, Rabbi.
What do you say?
That's what we do today also.
What do you say?
This is what we're doing today.
Right, exactly. And you should know, I think it's a similar halacha by Motzei Shabbat, when you make a bracha on the Borei Mareh, right? Do you have to close the lights when you say the bracha Borei Mareh? right? You see some people, before they say the bracha on that candle, they say Borei Moreish. And some people leave the lights on. So what now? What's the halacha to say? You're not supposed to say the bracha until you benefit from you have to have enough light from the candle that you're benefiting from, right? That's why people, the Ashkenazim, and when we do, you do this too, right? You look at your fingers to see the difference between the nail and the flesh. If you could see that this is your nail and this is your flesh, then you have had you having enough benefit from the light. If you can't discern which is your nail and which is your flesh, that means you don't have enough light. Some people would use coins. If you could see the difference between, meaning if you see that this coin and that coin, that would show that you. It's all about seeing. It's all about seeing. This is my nail. This is my flesh, and therefore I know I have had benefit from the light. If I can't see the difference, I didn't have. It's not called enough benefit. Just to be able, it's a measurement of size of benefit. Well, what about if the lights are on? Am I benefiting from the light? Am I benefiting the electric lights are providing the thing? What am I benefiting? The answer is, if you would close the lights, I would have the benefit from that light. The fact that I'm not really benefiting from the light is only because there's some extra thing. There's something outside the light, the candle that's providing light. But if you remove that from here, if you close the lights, I would have that benefit. So therefore, that would be good enough. That's why all the people that leave the lights on, when they say Borei Moreish, right, Mr. Haber, I would say that's their reasoning. Because you have created a light that you can benefit from. There's that potential you're benefiting now. And therefore, even if impractical, am I really benefiting from this light? But the answer is, yeah, it's there, it's enough to benefit from. That's what I would say. The similar thing that the Gemara says about the Sukkah. So the Gemara says, Hatam, Amalei, Rav Zera says to Abaya, Hatam over there, by the Sukkah that's between the mountains, down. If you remove the Ashtarot Tanayim, if you remove the mountains, Ikesel Sukkah. There is the shade of a Sukkah. It would be able to provide you the shade. Even though now there's shade without this without the schach, because you have the mountains are there, but that does not remove the identification of a sukkah. You made a structure that has the ability on its own to provide you with proper shade.
See the stars. Galaxy, stars, night. More than that.
So you think the schach is providing that?
It's doing the same thing.
Yes, yeah, but usually I presume the walls would still be of the valley would still be the mountains on the sides would still be protecting you from seeing up there. It would still be providing you the shade. Same question. Okay. So the Gemara says again, unless you see, but you see. But again, but I'm saying, but the stars you see a little bit, but the fact that you see a little bit of a star, it's still at the end of the day, it's a small amount. You know what I'm saying? It's still the shade is there, it's still there. So the Gemara says, Avahacha down the fanot. If you remove the walls, good morning, Yosef.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. If you remove the walls, then let yourself sukkah. Then there, by the case when the walls are higher than 20 amot, it's the walls that are providing you for most of the shade. So the Gemara says, Rava Amar, Rava says, Mehacha, he has a different pasuk. Pasuko teishu shivat yomim. The pasuk says you should dwell in a sukkah 7 days. Amra Torah, the Torah says, Kol shivat hayomim say midirat keva. I want all the 7 days, I want you to leave your permanent structure, your permanent house, v'shev b'dirat arai. And I want you to go ahead and live in a temporary dwelling. A temporary dwelling, which is a dwelling that you can make something very, you can have walls that are very temporary walls. And therefore, a sukkah that's higher than 20 amot is ad esem amah. That's until 20 amot, you can make a temporary type of dwelling. That's the normal. You make that. How do you make something? If you make it something small, you don't need to make it with a strong foundation. You could have temporary types of things that are not so strong. You want to make it temporary type of thing is something usually you make with something that's not too high. If you want to make something, high, you have to have something more permanent type of stronger walls to make something high, stronger foundation to make something high. And the Torah is telling you about making something, talking about a temporary type of structure, a temporary type of dwelling. You're living, because the idea of Sukkah is you leave your house, which your house is a more permanent type of dwelling, and you go out and you live in a temporary dwelling, and there's messages of that temporary dweller. Moshe Feinstein says that message is to remind a person that this world is temporary, and and also and why it happens at this time of the year when the Sukkot is called the Chag HaOsif. Sukkot is called the holiday of the gathering of the produce. It's when you bring in, after you work so hard, you're left, now you bring in the stuff into your storage houses. And now that you brought into your storage, it's like having the stuff in the bank. When you have your money in the bank, so people could start thinking, forgetting about the fact that this world is temporary. And therefore Hashem says at that time period, when you are
they bring the Maaseh Sheni, no?
Yeah, right. You give your Maaseh when you're very comfortable because you've earned. Now you've earned the produce. Now you brought it into your house. I want you to leave your house. Don't remember. I want you to go into a temporary dwelling to remember that this world is temporary. And once you recognize this world is temporary, so therefore you won't forget how you're going to live your life. Because sometimes when a person has all that he needs, he sometimes forgets about Hashem. When a person doesn't have what he needs it to rain. So he calls out to Hashem, but now it's already done. He has everything, he might forget. So therefore, at that time of the year specifically, Hashem said to go outside your house and go into this temporary dwelling. So a temporary dwelling it's sufficient with you could make a temporary dwelling up to 20 amot, up to 30 to 40 feet, but which you're making something higher than 20 amot, ein adam oseh dirato dirat arai. Higher than 20 amot is not a temporary dwelling, ela dira keva. You make it in a more permanent. It's not sufficient to have light walls. You need to have, strong foundation. Right. You have to have an ability you're allowed to have the best walls. There's no halacha, as like Mark said. There's no real halachot regarding the walls of a sukkah besides the fact that it has to be sturdy, that the wind can't knock it down. Right. Iron walls also work, but you have to be able to make walls. You need to make walls, but you have to be able to have a temporary type of wall. And a sukkah that's what are we saying over here regarding the walls? We're saying the Torah is telling you, I want you to make something that could last with a temporary type of wall. Right? I'm telling you, a sukkah, the type of sukkah the height of the sukkah that I'm asking you to make, I'm not asking you to make something that has to have permanent walls. The Torah is not asking us to make something that has to have permanent walls. You could make permanent walls, but the Torah is asking us to make something that has the ability to last with temporary walls. The temporary wall can still hold. What is it?
Rabbi,
Right. So yes, Yosef.
The walls also cannot move more than like an inch in, an inch out.
Right. What Yosef is saying, the walls, there's certain laws about a wall. Let's say, sometimes they have these, what do they call it? These cloth stucco. Right. So if the wind moves it around, that's not a good wall. If anybody has those, there's a name for it. It's not called cloth stucco. What's it called? They put up this canvas sukkah. So the canvas sukkah, they have to make sure that it's sturdy, that it's very sturdy, strapped down, very sturdy. Or else if it moves, like Yosef said, that will invalidate it. It has to be a wall.
But that's why what people do, they're putting like 3 straps around the sukkah, that their movements actually don't move more than an inch each direction. And the rest of the wall can move. It's not the problem.
They figure out certain halachic ways how it should be kosher walls, however they figure it out. But the end of the day is it has to be a kosher wall. What makes something a kosher wall is that it's not moving, but it could still be a temporary type of. It could be a temporary type of material.
Temporary wall, 36 feet, it would fall back.
Generally speaking.
So it needs to be something that could. Low.
Right.
If I make this wall higher, it's not gonna work. If I keep this wall low, it will work.
Right.
That doesn't move you from doing a permanent wall.
Exactly.
Low.
Correct. Exactly. So that's what the Gemara says. So again, we'll see it in the Gemara. Ad esem ama adam oseh dirot dirot arai. Until 20 amot, the sukkah could stand with the temporary walls that are not so strong. But l'mayla mesem ama, but higher than 20 amot, ain't adam oseh dirot dirot arai. When you make something higher than 20 amot, you make it really strong. And the Torah wants you to make something that's a dirat arai. The Torah wants something that has the ability to stand, that has the ability to stand with temporary type of wall. So the fact that you made it in a strong way, beautiful, that's great. But I want you to have it, the height of the sukkah should be a height that could stand, that could make it with temporary walls. What is the height that could stand with a temporary wall? A 20 amma height. Higher than 20 amot is not something that generally could stand a temporary wall. So therefore, it's no good if it's higher than 20 amot. So Bayi challenges, he says he's going to challenge he's asking the question regarding the iron walls. Because if you tell Emale Abaye, Elama'ata, if that's the case, the way he says, Osa Mechitha Shabarzel. If you went ahead and you made it with mechitzos of barzel, you made it walls made out of iron, v'sikach gabam, and you put schach on top of the walls, hachinami de lo havi sukkah. Are you going to tell me because it's not a sukkah, but you made it in a very permanent way? So we'll see on Monday more about this. It's a complicated point here, but just to say what the answer is, what he started saying. A sukkah needs to be the Torah wants us to go into a temporary dwelling. A temporary dwelling is generally made less than 20 amot. Higher than 20 amot, you generally make something permanent. And therefore, a sukkah higher than 20 amot is not kosher. We'll have to see Monday more details about the walls and this opinion. I want to wish everyone a beautiful Shabbat. Thank you all for joining.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take it, Baba Yosef.
Saw pictures of the Suda. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much. Who sent it out?
Let me see. Who is YD?
YD?
Yeah.
Maybe Yaron Dahan.
Oh, you're on there. Yeah, your own sense.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Yosef, have a beautiful Shabbat, everybody.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom to you.